Thanks very much. Perry Wald, I work for SunGard. I'm a product architect there. I used to work in the sales side as pre-sales. I just wanted to take a chance to run through some of our experiences with cloud. So I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes or 25 minutes and try and compress it, talking about questions. I'm not going to get into lots of answers because that makes my life easy. I want to make sure you understand, I don't think the cloud is doom and gloom. I think the cloud is very, very strong, but I think we need to start thinking about some of the questions that come up to make sure that we're not just going blind into the cloud and hoping it will solve all our problems. So let's start with technical realities of the cloud. There are some key technical realities. Is everything a cloud service? Not everything is a cloud service. You can't always fit everything into the cloud. And when you're looking at a cloud, you've got to start the way you always have started. You've got to start with applications, and you've got to understand what your organization needs from an application, from a business perspective, and you've got to move forwards and then use that to drive where that application should live. There are now more and more applications that are coming out that are cloud-based. That is great because it means we can drive towards that. But let's not forget the old message that says, let's put things where it's appropriate. Let's use the cloud as it's appropriate. Let's not try and force everything into the cloud. The cloud is just another one of these 80-20 rules. You probably can fit 80% of your business into the cloud, and you probably will get a great deal of benefit from it. But 20% of your business, you may well not fit into the cloud, and trying to force it in is going back to the old models that we used to see with some of the large ERP providers, where you used to end up rebuilding your business model in order to fit your IT model. So, if you're not going to put everything in the cloud, what do you have to think about? You have to think about hybrid models. You have to think about how you're going to connect stuff into the systems that are in the cloud. You have to think about what your networking is, what your security is, what your methodology is. Public-facing clouds, absolutely brilliant. But if all of your systems, all of your back-office systems need to link to something that is private, that is behind firewalls, you don't want to just assume everything can go public-facing. So it's thinking about integrating with your existing hosting systems, integrating with your networking systems, and also thinking about what flexibility means. I'm guessing if I asked for a show of hands, that everybody would go, flexibility is one of those key words that joins with the cloud. But flexibility, as far as the cloud is concerned, is very much about resource flexibility. And what we need to focus on is it's not just resource flexibility that we need flexibility of choice of application. So I'm not hitting the cloud, I'm saying let's make sure that we can support hybrid models in any environment that we put in the cloud. Hybrid models means how do you connect to it? And this is, for me, this is a key driver. One of the things that's behind this move of infrastructure as a service and centralizing is the increased performance and the increased quality of comms, that we're now suddenly able to get to a point where comms can get central, so we can put processing centrally, which is effectively what cloud is doing. Cloud is bringing back the processing to a central location and farming out the information to a remote location. But I would say, don't just assume comms is great. SunGard's experience this year was that comms was the single biggest reason that people had disasters. It used to be power, it used to be flooding. This year it was comms. I would have expected comms to have got over that. And it's very much about resilience and how you've designed your resilience. If your service provider for your cloud has designed resilience into their system, that's brilliant. If you haven't designed resilience into your comm system, then your service is only going to be as good as your comm system is, not as good as your service provider's comm system is. So, touched on comms, performance and latency, not just of comms, but let's just understand what kind of SLAs we get. I'm going to ask for a show of hands. Cloud providers, how many of the cloud providers have you talked to that say to you, we can give you absolute performance SLAs in terms of click of a button to how many milliseconds to a response? One. Not many hands. And that doesn't shock me, because the whole point of cloud is that you're getting an advantage of a shared service, you're getting advantage of an incorporated service. That's great, not a problem, but be aware of it. Start thinking about the performance of your systems and start thinking about how your systems work and what kind of performance you need. We used to, in the old mainframe and mid-range world, I'm hoping some of you remember that, we used to talk a lot about batch and interactive processing. And we used to spend a lot of time trying to work out what needed to be batch and what needed to be interactive, and whether it mattered, whether it took 3 seconds or 30 or 3 minutes. And those are the kind of messages that I really want to bring to you about performance and latency. It's no good if you're putting a hosted desktop solution somewhere and the mouse is 3 inches behind the movement. It's no good if you're putting a booking system somewhere and it takes 30 seconds for a response from hitting the booking system to getting that back. That's going to start defining that IDC landscape of whether you go for private cloud, whether you go for hosted, whether you go for public. You need to think about what you're expecting from your systems, and you need to be able to define that. You need to get a more granular understanding of what you expect from your systems. So, I want to talk about backup, multi-site availability, recovery. That's not going to surprise you considering where I'm from. But I want to ask you about backup. What does HA mean? In the world I came from when I started IT, HA meant always available. It meant clustered systems. It meant if something dies, there is a non-disruptive service. And we used to have to design that into our solutions. A lot of the technologies that are behind cloud allow that, but also a lot of the technologies that are behind cloud have subtly redefined HA. So the HA has started becoming, how quickly can we get you back on if you've gone wrong? Right? I'm not going to say any names, but I'm sure we all know where the vendors are that deal with these things. That HA has become a statement of, if you spot a hardware fault before it happens, we can fix it. If you don't spot the hardware fault before it happens, we can get you back up in seconds. That might be sufficient. That might be more than sufficient. Something we end up doing is we spend a lot of time understanding what we call disaster recovery or failover potential is. But you've got to remember that. You've got to start asking your cloud providers, are they multi-site? Are they true multi-site? What I mean by true multi-site is, if one of their sites burns down, does everything carry on going at the second site? How long does it take for everything to come back up at the second site? You need to think about your backup regimes. If you're putting everything in the cloud and you've got compliance issues and you've got to take a backup every year, every day, and then a monthly, and then a yearly, and keep that for 7 years, you've got to think about whether your cloud provider is going to give you that flexibility of backup. Now, my feeling is that at the moment, cloud is probably a little ahead of compliance, and that compliance will look at cloud and compliance will start saying, well, this is okay for us, this is not okay, but it's starting to understand those compliance issues in terms of cloud. And I had one customer who said, that's no problem, I can go cloud, and what I can do is I can take my data out, I can back up, I can pull my data out the cloud for backup reasons, and I can off-site back up my data. That is a brilliant idea for compliance, but what happens if you need to restore it? How big's your pipe to get that data back into the cloud if you need to restore it? None of these should be a problem, but you need to think about how you're going to integrate with your cloud services and how you're going to get what you see as your normal business day-to-day requirements working with your cloud services. Oh, let's hope that wasn't an important one. So we've talked about technical details. I want to touch on some of the cultural, some of the business realities, and I want to start with this one, the computer hugger. So I will happily admit I'm a geek. All right? I started in this IT world as a chip designer. You don't get really much more geeky than that. That's the IT equivalent of a rocket scientist, I reckon, except I can't blow things up. But, you know, I love my IT and I want to hold on to it. And if you're going to start putting your IT out to cloud, if you're going to start putting your IT out to external services, you need to realize that the people that run systems for you, the geeks like me, right, we get a bit scared. We get scared because we like to hold on to our computers. We get scared because we're worried that when we can't touch and feel it, we're going to be put on the spot and be told, fix that, and we've got no way to do it. And then we start panicking and running around and blaming other people and going, it's not me. You know, I spent years as a network engineer, and the most common phrase I ever heard in any IT organization is, it's the network. I can hear that rings a bell. I spent years saying to people, it's not the network, it's the systems at the either end, and we're trying to get data there, but if it didn't matter. The more I explained it, the more people went, it's the network. So you know, any cloud solution for you has got to work with the personalities of the people in your IT departments. You've got to get buy-in from them. You can't get a solution that is just thrown down on a plate, you will do this. And there is a key thing here. I call it the play factor. Right? I spend 80% of my day doing IT chores, doing stuff that needs to get done, and I spent 20% of my day playing with new technology. And that playing with new technology is where departments get new ideas and where departments go, hey, we can do it in a new way. So don't take away your IT department's play capability. Doesn't mean you shouldn't go into the cloud, but think about that because that's where your innovation comes from as well. So what was my next slide? Control issues. Make sure that you have the appropriate level of control. Perhaps nuclear power stations are a little more than the appropriate level of control, but make sure that you have the appropriate level of control. Cloud is not necessarily outsourcing. We've been through that whole process of taking whole departments and 2Ping them out to other people. Let's make sure that what we're not doing is we're giving away the control we need. Let's give away the control that we don't need. If you're giving away OS management as a level of control, make sure you know, does that mean that you can still interact? Make sure you know, is that a sysadmin role that your cloud provider is giving you? Or is it an absolutely tied down role that means that there's a list of things you can't do anymore? Because there's nothing more frustrating than investing in a project, moving everything to a new environment that gives you all these advantages, and then your FD comes along and says, I need to change this, and you go, we can't do it anymore because we don't have authority to do that. And again, I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying think of partnerships. Cloud shouldn't be this ephemeral thing that you never know anything about. You wouldn't do that in any other area of IT, so think about partnerships. Think about sizing as well. A lot of the fish slides are actually for Hannah, who likes fish. So think about sizing. We're all hoping that cloud is going to take us away from that problem of sizing. We're all hoping that cloud is going to allow us to go, I don't need to worry about sizing anymore. I'll switch on what I need now, and I'll switch more on as I need it. And that is the nirvana. And if we can get there, then that's great. But think about how you apply it. Sometimes it's not about adding machines, it's about adding power to machines. Sometimes it's not about adding machines or adding power, it's about adding bandwidth. Sometimes it's being able to have the capacity to flex the processing at the moment that it's required, rather than having to go in and switch on more processing when it's required. So we still need to do the right sizing exercises in order to get things sized. And we still need to do the financial planning. What do I mean by financial planning? Well, I'm in product now, and one of the things that is key for the role I do is being able to help the salesman understand when we're selling something what the monthly cost is. Because every FD